Welcome to Talk Purpose and Truth with Eden and Kim, shifting you into higher consciousness, the show that elevates, uplifts, and encourages listeners to grow, heal, awaken, and evolve. Eden and Kim include bold topics, special interviews with inspiring guests, intuitive readings, channeled messages from beyond, including celebrities, hot topics to expand your awareness, and time for questions from the audience. Tune in for unprecedented truth, authenticity, on-purpose discussions, and magical moments.
Right to it. As you all know, we have had a lot of wonderful Prince episodes. I think we've had 8 different guests that had some sort of connection, relationship, working partnership, or whatever with Prince, including recently Morris Hayes, which was amazing. And a while back, we had an episode that was all about Big Chick, who was Prince's longtime bodyguard and good friend. And it was a very popular episode, both on our podcast and on our YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And we had a lot of requests for more stories related to Big Chick and Prince. And we got blessed to have Big Chick's daughter with us today, Melissa Huntsberry. And she's just amazing and inspiring and runs a group that honors her dad's legacy and is always posting these fascinating pictures. And she's also just a really down-to-earth, fun, inspirational person. We've gotten to know her through social media. It seems sometimes social media can be so positive if you use it correctly. And I feel like, sometimes you can form these friendships with people where you feel like you've met them, and then you get to meet them in person later, and you're like, oh, I already felt like I met you in person because of the connection. So a lot of it really is, it's really just energy. And that's why even a lot of you listening to the podcast probably have felt like you've met some of our guests, have met us, even if you haven't yet, because of the energy, whatever you're feeling for that episode at that time. So I would like to welcome Melissa to the podcast.
Hello. I'm jealous.
Hi, Melissa.
Oh, Kim, your glow looks amazing. I know you were on vacation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention, I was just in Cabo. So I'm going to send you guys all positive vibes from over in Mexico. But I just got back. But what was so great about Cabo was, I've been before, but I felt like this time I had to postpone the trip a whole bunch of times because of the pandemic. And now the numbers are fairly low there. So they're being very safe anyways. But it just felt like the best energy. Like everyone was so happy, and it just felt very carefree, like an escape from kind of what's crazy in the world right now. Mm-hmm. And so I feel really blessed that I got to go do that. And my daughters turned way, way tanner than me, so that now they even look less like me than they did before. So
you're fabulous.
Thank you.
I'm sort of pace light, but I mean, I shouldn't say that because the summers are great here, but I'm working.
Are you in Minnesota?
I love Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bogota, but it's I say.
Okay. Yeah. So, Melissa, can you tell us what it was like growing up with your dad working with Prince?
Well, my dad didn't always work for Prince, so there was life.
That part of it. Yeah. Yeah.
So that part of it was crazy, right? I mean, I didn't know who Prince was. Obviously, I was the summer of 9th grade, and we lived in Ohio, and I was watching, I'll never forget it. I was watching TV with my dad, the good old floor models back in the day. And this guy comes on TV in a bikini bottom and a coat jacket. And he was dancing around to this funky music. Kind of reminded me of something more spectacular than the Daz Band. And I was like, Dad, look at that guy. He has bikini bottoms on. And lo and behold, a couple months later, my dad was his bodyguard. So,
oh my God.
Wow. Like you called that in, you manifested it.
Manifested. But it was crazy. I mean, I was in high school, so through Prince back then, it was the Dirty Mind tour and controversy. So not a lot of people knew who Prince was, but when my dad started with him, he gave us all like this, I don't know, like this box goodies, and it was cassette tapes and albums and T-shirts and sweatshirts, and we listened to the music, and I had never heard such like drums and keyboards, and I was immediately entranced with the music. I mean, all of my siblings and I were, there's 6 of us. So, I mean, it was pretty cool to grow up in that atmosphere and just go to limited concerts and parties. And it wasn't only just Prince parties, but it was like if he gave Jill Jones a party or Jerome a party, or we were always on the guest list. And
wow.
That was pretty cool to grow up around that.
Yeah, that's very special. And then did things shift? Because he was already becoming very famous then, and then it really erupted as he got into doing Purple Rain and your dad going out with him when he received his awards and things like that. Like, did things shift for you where you were like, oh my gosh, it's like my dad's famous and we're famous, life is different, and like, how did you feel?
Well, I feel like Dad would always let us go to the warehouse with him. It was out in Hopkins on Highway 7, and we'd watch Prince and the band rehearse for Purple Rain, and Prince was crazy perfectionist. I mean, he would sit there and say again, and you could tell the band was getting tired, but Prince had this like endless amount of energy, and we would be sitting there watching it. And I remember watching Prince every day try to, that little kick he does with the microphone stand.
Yeah.
He'll kick forward and then it comes back and he catches it and he'll do blitz or whatever. Mm-hmm. We watched him perfect that. I mean, he couldn't do that in the beginning, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm like watching history right in front of my face. And I mean, it was pretty cool to watch all of that explode right in front of us. So, I mean, it went from none of my friends knowing him to like even before Purple Rain, 1999, right? Little red Corvette.
Yeah.
One of my friends, she had a little black Chevette, and when we were in there, we'd sing Little Black Chevette. And I mean, it was pretty cool to watch all of that. I remember once Prince was rehearsing and he called me up. Have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live skit where he whispers in somebody's ear?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, I haven't.
Like, if any Saturday Night Live fans out there who like does the skit, they'll be like Prince and whispering in somebody. He did that in real life. So he's like, can you go get me Five Alive? So it was across the street, was Holiday. He had 20, and I had to go across the street and get him Five Alive. And I was like, this is real life.
What's Five Alive?
Yeah.
It's orange juice, but with a lot of fruits.
Oh.
Huh. Interesting.
It's not as popular now as it was in the 80s, but it was a thing. I mean, he'd drink it right out of the carton and pretty
healthy. Do you feel like your dad just stayed your same old dad throughout, or did he kind of change with what was going on?
Oh, my dad was always the same dad. Always. Like, big teddy bear, but huge protector of me and I have 4 sisters and a brother. My sister Becky just recently, like last December, passed away, and that was pretty awful, but feel like she's with him now. And they both were 49 when they passed away, which is really weird. But my dad,
your dad and your sister.
Right. They were both 49 when they passed away. So, I mean, he always stayed, well, my dad was 6'7" and he was huge. I mean, picture never really did his muscles justice. I mean, he used to work out in the basement and crank Leonard Skinner before he was even with Prince. He used to bodyguard AC/DC. So he was more of a rock and roller, but he also loved country, which he loved, Johnny Cash. And I mean, I just remember that growing up, hearing the music blasting in the basement. My dad would be lifting weights.
Wow.
So, I mean, he always stayed consistent. He was big, and we could never go out to eat where there was a crowd. I remember being so hungry, and we'd all be smashed in the back of his Chrysler, and we're like, Dad, we're hungry. No, it's too crowded in there because people would.
Was that because they didn't want to be recognized?
No, it was more like staring. He didn't like that because my dad loved to eat, and someone stared at him. It was just kind of like he didn't like that, but I just wanted to eat as a kid. And I think my dad and I had a great camaraderie where we were both like pretty loud and told stories, and I'd always give my dad crap like, oh my gosh, I want to go eat. Like, why can't we just go eat?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't live a normal life.
Right. And I see that with certain people, and I feel for them because the 80s, Prince even around Minneapolis could go anywhere and people just knew to leave him alone. And it was like that with my dad too, but people would stare because my dad was big as life. He couldn't hide.
Yeah. So. He was like striking, like where you just were like, he looks unique and different than other people.
Yeah, and he was in the Marines, so he had tattoos, and so, yeah, I remember Prince would wear a little scarf around his head, and when they'd go to the airport, and he had his little, disguise, but then my dad would have to be back, because you can't hide my dad. You couldn't hide. There was no disguise.
Then they would know.
Yeah.
Then they would know it's Prince. Yeah. Was there a particular memory that stands out for you as the most, like the one that just pops in your head regularly?
Yeah, I think for me, my dad would let us go to concerts, and so would Prince, and he'd put us on the soundboard, like, where the whole heart of the concert is, the soundboard. We'd get to sit there. We were protected because my dad was very protective, but he also wanted us to enjoy the concert. So that's pretty fun. And then there's another one that stands out. My sister, Tina, she's 4 years older than me. I think, Kim, you've seen her on Facebook.
Yeah.
She was his assistant, and that was pretty cool. So I'd always say, I want to go, because my dad one time had her go over and pick up something from Prince, and I don't remember what it was. This is the 80s. But I do remember it's this Purple House in Chanhassen, and we go over and ring the doorbell, and we hear somebody run up the steps, and there's Prince, and he has this white facial mask on. Here's me. I yell, trick or treat, right? Because, I was always the one that had to say something, like, comedy-wise, and all of a sudden the door slams in our face, and my sister Tina's like, oh my gosh, Melissa, you're in trouble. Because, we hear him run down the steps. We're like, is he coming back? So we're standing there, waiting, and then I'm like, I'm not in. Well, it was funny. So I'm standing there. Am I in trouble? So then all of a sudden he opens the door again, and he's kind of laughing and smiling real big. If anybody knows the way Prince smiled, his smile was so big, and it was just funny. So it was all fine. We got what we were supposed to get, and we got out of there. And I told Dad, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" But it was funny.
I think he was going along with the joke.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like. Yeah. So how about how did it feel when this was all like kind of going on in your life, and were you able to still be at school, have your friends, and live that normal life, or did people look at you differently?
Okay, so we moved to Minnesota in 1983. It was the summer of 1983, and little town in Chanhassen, it's this little town in Chanhassen where Prince was from, and we lived in Chanhassen Estates, and it was off of Highway 5 behind this McDonald's, and Prince would come flying down Dakota Avenue in his, black BMW with his bass blaring and his music, loud. So the neighbors knew who we were before we even started school. And there was a lot of people from Chaska that lived in Chan Estates. So by the time Kim and Bridget and I, we were the three girls going into high school, we're all a year apart, and I'm the oldest, and then there's Tina, 4 years older than me. But by the time we got into high school, we were known as the Prince girls, which I was like, oh, great. Because I don't know, people, if they introduced me to as Prince's bodyguard, I'd always go, no, Melissa. Because I always my own identity, because that's just who I am. And I think that's funny because Prince once said if I didn't look like my siblings, he would think I was adopted because I was pretty boisterous. I mean, his fame didn't, separate me from being able to talk to him, just have a normal conversation.
You were not intimidated by him.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I've always.
And most people were.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always, not that my siblings were, of course, way louder now that they've grown up, but when you're younger, you all have, and they weren't like super shy or anything, but I don't know, I would always just talk to him and it was different. He was like, if Melissa wasn't so much like, if she didn't look like her family, I would think she was adopted. So
that's a compliment.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been pretty, and I was class clown in high school. So I believe comic relief is the best, right? If you're ever really upset or anything, just to laugh, I think it's the best.
Did your dad and Prince play, because I know Prince was known as a prankster, and one of my favorite videos to look up of him was when he was playing a prank on Jay Leno. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but it's so funny. Like, Jay Leno plays a prank on him, so then Prince gets him back, and he hides in the security office and pretends to be the security guard or something like that. Like, it's just really funny. You have to look up YouTube Prince and Jay Leno. But I know Prince was known as playing jokes, and so did your dad and he play jokes on each other?
Oh yeah. They were more like in cahoots with each other. I know they had a thing against the time. It was the first tour that we went to, Prince flew us to Cleveland from Minnesota so we could go to a concert and visit my grandparents, which were in. So they were having kind of this food fight type of thing, and it was whipped cream and food was flying, and I know it was Let's Work, and I believe, don't quote me on that, but they were playing music, and you could see stuff flying. And then when I think that something happened with that, where they came out and they did something to Prince, and then all of a sudden on the time, my dad comes on stage and he takes Jesse, I think, off the stage or something. And it was all crazy. And it's so funny. It was just fun. And they had a lot of fun. And I mean, anybody I ever talked to that was on tour always said, oh my gosh, your dad was the best. But we got to do a lot of that. We went on tour, not on tour literally, but like we got to go to some concerts. And when we lived in Tennessee, we went to we all drove to Chattanooga. Mm-hmm. And it's cool. They all had hotel rooms, but they didn't spend the night, right? They just did the hotel rooms before the concert to freshen up because they were on a bus. So Prince had told my dad, if the girls want to drive and bring some friends, they can all stay in the hotels and go to the concert. So that's what we got to do.
So cool. How many concerts? I guess you can't count really because you saw all these rehearsals. I was going to say, how many do you feel you went to? But
a lot.
Probably hard to know. Yeah.
Time, Controversy, and then 1999, and Purple Rain.
Wow.
Purple Rain by heart because we watched him rehearse, right? Because he had, and then it was just all cool. I mean, Prince, I love the video where he does with all the greats like Tom Petty, the guitar one.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, yes. I think he really gained a lot of respect because he is ultimate guitarist, right? I mean,
I agree.
And I think a lot of people saw that and they were like, oh my gosh, this guy is for real. And, so when we would go to these concerts, it never got old. It never got boring. And then when we would go watch him rehearse, I even heard him play Jimi Hendrix. What is that? Purple Haze? Is that Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky? I don't know. And I was just sitting there going, okay, he's playing Jimi Hendrix and he's killing it, right in front of me. So, I mean, as a kid, all that stuff in high school, it was pretty cool.
And it must have been interesting to see, later in the years, just even a few years back, like how he evolved and what he did. And it's just like you started from the beginning. And I watch, I love the video in the beginning, like a little after Dirty Mind and Controversy, when he was first singing Nothing Compares to You, and that they released that video. And he was so young, and it's just so raw and vulnerable. And it's just as gifted as he was always, but it just has this like vulnerability to it. So I watch it over and over, and you got to see those rehearsals. Just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say I was proud of him. And, I did feel invested. I mean, me and my siblings all did. I mean, he came to holidays, he came to picnics, and I'll never forget, Dad invited him over the first year we lived there for 4th of July. We moved there like July 3rd, 1983, and July 4th, the whole Prince crew came over, and Dad set up the volleyball net, and Dad was all about cookouts, and Mom, coming from Tennessee, was a huge, nice Southern cook. Prince loved her food, and here's Prince with high on playing volleyball in our yard, and we had neighbors peeking over the fence. So, I mean, and they all brought Heineken. I mean, I was in high school, and I was like, well, what's this Heineken? It's just, they all brought Heineken. Kind of
that is
Budweiser, and
right.
Plus in Tennessee. And I mean, it was really fun. I can't say that it wasn't the greatest thing, because it was. I can't imagine life any other way, because that's all I know. But I know one of the questions was, did I feel famous? I didn't feel famous, but I feel like anywhere I went, my friends would say, oh my gosh, her dad's Prince's bodyguard, because it was relevant, right? Like Purple Rain at the movies, and it was winning all the awards, and, the music was, and it was like, it always made me feel like, well, loved, but I always got my friends on my own account, because
that's important.
I mean, I was in plays and sports, and even though we moved a lot, I mean, I can tell you I moved 4 times in high school. So,
wow.
And anywhere I went, I still have the same friends on Facebook, and I still keep in touch with a lot of my friends. So that's pretty cool. So I don't feel like I gained friends because of Prince, but I feel like definitely we were recognized because of Prince. But that's all I know.
And it's pretty incredible too that your dad included all of you every time he worked with him, most of the time, with rehearsals and concerts, because he didn't have to do that, and Prince allowed it.
Okay, so ironically, that's funny, because there was always a guest list, and everybody was allowed 2 or 3 people, but my dad always had 6 or 7 or something. And it's funny, because I always got to bring a guest or 2 guests out of the 6 of us kids, because I always was really good at pouting to get my way. So I'd go, oh my gosh, Dad, please, they love Prince, bring 2 people. So I knew how to work my dad for sure on that part of it. But yeah, he was pretty big. All of my siblings got to bring somebody once in a while, but I always got to bring 2 people. And I don't know how I maneuvered that, but I always tried.
Yeah, because from the things that I feel like I might know about him is that Prince, at least, he was very private, and it wasn't easy to get away with something like that.
And I agree. Prince really respected my dad a lot, and he only trusted my dad with certain things. So Prince would rehearse until 2 a.m. or be up until 2, like we're on tour. And then my dad would have to stay up to make sure the buses were in order, the flights. I mean, it was really weird. He trusted my dad with that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where White Slave comes to play in the book. It's not about race. And I know this is kind of a crucial time with Black Lives Matter and everything. There's not any of us in my family that have a racist bone in their body, but the book refers to Coke, which is set in the 80s. You guys have to remember the book is set in the 80s. So that was some roadies introduced him to that to kind of keep up at night.
Your dad.
My dad. And
So and it was way more common back then that people were doing that.
I want to just put it out there. She's talking about cocaine, right? You're talking about coke? Okay.
The book that
because we haven't brought up the book yet, so
explain. Let's explain. Why don't you explain the book? And I know it's been talked about in part 1 about Big Chick, but let's remind everyone about the book.
Right. So I remember vividly my dad sitting on our deck in Chanhassen, tape recording about the book, right? Like he was writing this book. My dad wrote the book before he passed away. And my sister Tina, that was Prince's assistant, she's the oldest of 6 kids. She typed the book, old-fashioned typewriter, right? She did all of that. And I remember my dad saying, you know, sex sells, like Madonna and Prince. And he did, you know, in the book, I love it. I read it in a day. And I felt like, you know, I know the ending. My dad dies, right? I mean, that's terrible. But I love that he got the book out. I mean, he didn't get it out. My sister and my mom did. And he wanted it to be out for a reason, because he just wanted, you know, to tell his life story. It wasn't just about Prince. He starts out as a bodyguard and all that stuff. So in his time with Prince, because it was so fast paced, he was introduced to cocaine, and Prince did not need coke. I want to say that right now. He didn't even know my dad was doing it. And but it was a glamorous way of staying up, I guess. And I didn't agree with it. I never did drugs. I always drank in high school, keg parties, that's it. But I'm not gonna lie, I tried it once, but kind of, you know, I did, but not with my dad either. It was at a party, and like you said, it was big in the 80s, and I graduated 5, but that's, you know, right on the front of the book, there's a rolled up dollar and a line of coke.
Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, and it is a really good book. I got to have a copy, and it's still available on Amazon, right?
Amazon, Target, and what's the other bookstore?
Barnes and Noble.
Yes, thank you. I always want to say Beat Alton. It's an 80 things.
Yeah, Barnes and Noble, barnesandnoble.com.
It's all on
plays. Yeah.
For more information on Eden, go to edensustin.com. For more information on Kim, go to kimlifecoach.com. Make sure to follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Talk Purpose and Truth Podcast. If you loved this episode, you'll love every episode. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you for listening.